Hello and welcome to North Coast Journal Preview, where we talk about the stories that are getting covered in this week's North Coast Journal. I'm here joined in the Access Humboldt studios with Jennifer Famico Cahill. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello, how are you?
Doing fine. Thanks for joining us here and meeting up again this week. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, even though I don't have the civilizing force of Thad with me today.
True enough.
You're very brave to face me alone. Thank
That's
you.
quite all right. I thoroughly enjoy your company, and we'll just catch up with Thad next week.
He has to say that.
They pay me. No, they don't really pay me. So let's dive right in and talk about what's on the cover.
Okay, so this cover, which I just, personal plug, I really like the way this cover looks. And we have, if you haven't paid attention to the bylines at the bottom of the artwork, this is a cover by Jonathan Webster, who reworked, made magic with some stock images to make this lovely graphic. And the story is about Measure R, which is a tax measure coming up on the ballot on March 3rd. And it has to do with Arcata's fire district. And Thad basically dove into the nitty-gritty of the finances of it and spoke to both people on the fire district board and firefighters and those who are opposing the measure.
So the short version of the measure, to paraphrase, I guess, is that it will allow to fully fund the existing infrastructure?
Yes, and there's a lot of Arcata's fire district that's managed by volunteers who do a lot of different work, but a lot of it is done by paid professional firefighters and all the people who need to support their work. So that amount of money that Measure R would set aside to maintain that staffing is up on the ballot on March 3rd, and it's one of the few times where you get to vote on something that is going to directly impact your life if you're in the Arcata Fire District. For example, you're not voting for someone who may or may not do something that they've promised you, someone who may or may not do something that is within their agenda. You are voting for the thing to be done or not done. And it's a tremendous responsibility and a tremendous power for the voters in Arcata.
So in this case, maintaining full funding would directly deliver keeping 3 stations open and fully staffing those, 2 people full-time, I think, plus a supervisor, 24/7 coverage for all 3. Right,
and that 24/7 coverage is the thing, right? It's the thing that you lose when you lose funding. And Thad talked to, among other people, Rob Cannon of the Arcata Fire District Volunteers, and talked about the kinds of things that volunteers do and the challenges of getting volunteers. It would be so great if we could just have, lots and lots of people who have 300 hours to devote to getting trained before you can even start doing things, which, I don't know, at first I was like, 300 hours? That's a crazy amount of training. And then I remembered, oh, right, this is a person who's training to go into a fire and hopefully stop it and pull other people out of the fire. Right. Sounds dangerous.
Oh yeah, so you need to be well trained.
Yes.
And then on top of that, you need the EMT training, which I think is 150 or something like that.
Yes, and then you need to be able to leave at a moment's notice. You need to be able to drop what you're doing, your work, your family, what have you, and jump into a vehicle and head to a fire or head to an emergency. And they cover a lot more than just fires. Yeah. And I wish it was all kittens and trees. Sadly, it's not. One of the stories that was mentioned in Thad's discussion with the folks at the fire district was they pulled that horse that was stuck in the mud out of the mud. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And then, animals get stuck, and who are you going to call? It's a bizarre skill set to be able to yank a large live animal that's mired in mud like it's the La Brea tar pits. But
so it's that red toolbox that the one firefighter mentioned that they respond to just about any community need. They're the first responders.
Yes, including some logistical puzzles. Yeah.
And there's the university, there's the 101, and there's outlying communities, and that response time is of critical importance.
Yeah, and that's something that we gave a lot of thought to when we were looking through artwork to go with this story. We realized that we kind of have a a cache of photos of burned buildings, of buildings that, didn't burn all the way to the ground.
Right.
When you look at the photos of burned buildings, you see destruction. But then when you think about that one didn't have a death, or, here's another one that didn't have a fatality, or here's one where 20 people were in the building and there was one fatality. And a lot of that has to do with response time.
So there are people out there who would say, well, who would be against this? And I bet you there are people in the community who are against it, and they have their reasons. So do you want to get into that at all?
In fact, if you want to read straight from the horse's mouth, in our letters section this week, we have a gentleman who is both quoted in the story and who, let's see, where is it? It's on page, I want to be able to send you to it, page 6 of the paper. Uriah Driscoll, who you may have heard from before. He is a vocal advocate for horse trails and comes out strong against the removal of invasive plants. Interesting, okay. Yes. So you'll have heard from him if you're a person who follows, say, like dune ecosystems and things like that. So he and Ken Sawatsky, who, if you have watched Access Humboldt's coverage of, for example, Arcata City meetings, supervisors meetings. Right. When you watch that public comment, if you've ever watched a full public comment, I'm going to guess you've seen Ken Sawatsky. Probably then. Yes, he has much to contribute. And they are both representing the Humboldt Taxpayers League, and their concern is that it's just too much money. That it's too much money and that there are other ways to maintain the level of emergency coverage without increasing taxes on homes. One of their suggestions is to consolidate 2 of the firehouses and eliminate 1. Another issue besides that is I think they were suggesting more volunteers. Yeah. Again, the issues we mentioned, it can be difficult to get more volunteers. I'm not sure what their solutions are on that, but the chart that's in here, again, thank you, Jonathan Webster, with your fancy artwork, should give you a good idea. If a lot of this is maddening, as it is to me, you can take a look on, we have this beautiful graphic. I just want everyone to look at it and love it. It has tiny cartoon firemen. So the left is status quo, if it were fully funded, and the right is what sort of consolidation, the impact of consolidation and lack of increased funding. Yes, and you can see there's a direct line to the firefighter images. I should say firefighter, not fireman, pardon me. What am I, 100? Anyway, but it gives you a good sense of what the increases will be financially and what the impacts will be in terms of for lack of a better word, rubber boots on the ground. The amount of money that the tax increase would come to for a single family household is $98 a year. It is different. I think it's $75 for a mobile home. And that money is not nothing. It's right. For a lot of people, that's a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money for me, but anyway, this is what's on the measure, and this is what people have a direct say in. And so, our hope is that people will read carefully, think over what they want to do, and, on March 3rd, show up and vote on it, and not suddenly either look at their bill or look at their coverage or, later come to it and say to themselves, well, why is it this way? Right. Why is my bill up, or why is my neighborhood fire station getting shut down? Yes. So it's one or the other. So read up, get informed, and that way show up on March 3rd and vote from a position of being informed. Yes. And in the back of the book, we have something else that you're going to love. We have, I don't know if you've ever seen Jesse Wiedel's work elsewhere. Oh, I've heard. He's done some work I remember the first time I saw his work, he's a really prolific artist, and he's recognized, honestly, worldwide. He's got a show coming up, I believe it's in Switzerland soon. Right on. But he's a local guy. He actually is the fellow who sends us press releases from CR. He does he does College of the Redwoods PR work. So anyway, Jesse does these lurid paintings. And the first time I saw his work, it was this flyer for a band that I can't even remember who the band was, but it was this kind of monster mouth with these graveyard teeth in it, and it was just, there was saliva, everything was red, and I thought, oh my God, kill me. Like I
Right.
just, but it's really, it's stuck in my brain forever. At the end of my life, it will flash before my eyes.
Yeah. So it's ingrained in your head, this image of his style.
Yes, and he does a lot of really kind of gritty street scenes with people. There's a lot of kind of poverty, drugs, and kind of really struggling poor white people in his pieces. And he really gets the grimmer and also the sort of grim gallows humor of a population that's, part of what we see in Eureka.
Sure.
Hard times for people, and also people in hard times, weirdly, without pity and without condescension, as Gabrielle Gopinath, our art columnist, says, but with humor, and often their own humor, instead of the kind of poverty porn that you see from a lot of different photographers and artists where you're like, oh, look at these poor people. These are people who are up to shenanigans.
Yeah.
It's reminding me actually of Bruegel, who, about whom this week Colin is writing about Bruegel. And I feel like maybe Jesse Wiedel is our Bruegel. I don't know.
Nice.
Anyway, he did a series called Heroin Hilton.
Oh, okay.
And there's a somewhat infamous building downtown.
Yeah.
In Eureka, and it's across from the shanty,
Right.
Where infamous things also happen. But
Another story.
another story. Anyway, if one were to frequent the shanty, one might see Jesse's work for the brief time that it appeared on this building. So this building that was at one point condemned and then sold was called the Heroin Hilton because it was really kind of a magnet for drug use and shenanigans.
So the real Heroin Hilton inspired him to create art that was a reflection of what people would have experienced if they witnessed it when it was not boarded up.
And then those images were attached to the building itself, onto the boarded up windows, the boarded up door. For example, one of the pictures is of a gentleman pouring a bong's water out the window onto the street. And Jesse said that's a thing he actually saw at that building. And although when he saw it, it was from the second floor, I believe.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
But he couldn't get the art up there on the guerrilla post my art up in the middle of the night kind of thing moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things about street art. We have a street art festival now, ongoing, and it's coming again this year. But it's a different kind of street art. What Jesse did is, I think, gently called unsanctioned public art.
There you go.
It counts as graffiti, I think, and his belief at the time was that this was an abandoned building, that this was not owned by anyone. But then the images vanished, and we weren't sure, well, were they taken? Were they taken down by an owner? And Lost Coast Outpost reported on this story, actually.
Okay.
But Gabrielle is interested in it as an art project rather than a news story. And she does some wonderful writing for us. And she really looked at and analyzed photos of the images and the subsequent wheat paste versions that went up after.
So we only have a few minutes left. Can you briefly say what that actually was? After they were taken down, there was digital images?
Yeah, black and white versions went right back up. I don't want to narc in on anybody, but anyway, they went right back up, and they're painted over too. So what you can see if you go there now is just sort of the white on white paint over.
Gotcha.
But it was a nice chance for Gabrielle to talk about both the paintings, what they say about Humboldt and what it says about Humboldt's people, and the kind of street art that is not decorative. As Jesse himself says, he's fine with decorative street art and the beautiful things that have gone up in the last few festivals. But this is a different kind of street art. This is about story and narrative and some of the truth of where we live.
This was awesome. Thank you for piquing our interest in this week's edition of North Coast Journal. Everybody out there, pick up a copy. They're on newsstands now. Stay informed. Show up and vote on March 3rd. I'd like to put in a plug for that. Until next time, I'm your host, Jay Frank, here at Access Humboldt. Jennifer, thank you. See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye, guys.